Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today, I want to talk about school as preparation for game development. Now, I've touched on this in many videos. I liked being in school. I know some of you don't. I know some of you think college is a waste of time. And for some of you, it would be. For some of you, it will not be. So, let me just talk about how school, and when I started even in high school, was sort of a preparation for my whole game development career. So let's start in high school. High school, as I've mentioned, is where I first learned about D&D and I started playing regular campaigns with my D&D friends. True, I did hear about D&D and play for the first time with naval officers from my mom's office, but my regular D&D experiences started in high school. And it wasn't restricted to just the weekends when we would play. We would spend the whole week talking about what we had done, what we wanted to do, house rules, things we'd changed in the game. It was really exciting because there was nothing like it before. D&D was a brand new thing. There was nothing to compare it to. There was no it was like unlike anything we'd ever encountered. So, one of the things that I learned from that, which was part of my school experience, was playing this game as a group experience. It wasn't something you played solo. You played in a group, and as a DM, I had to start anticipating crazy choices by my players. I started to have to react to them and improv new scenarios based on what they had done. All four of my friends from that group, we all tried doing being the DM. I ended up DMing most often because I saw being a DM as being an entertainer, not someone who's trying to kill the players. I also liked riffing on what their choices were. I thought that was part of the game. I thought part of the cool thing was me setting up a dungeon and them deciding not to kill the vampire. Hey, could we be your thralls? Could you turn us into vampires and we'll work for you? I'm like, I did not see that coming. I like that. Some of the DMs were like, no, get with the story. Do what I'm, why aren't you doing what I'm telling you to do? And that those different approaches led to me being DM more frequently. Now, that's not to say that there weren't experiences in high school that led to a set of skills that I used for decades. I would say in math, it was the geometry and trigonometry classes that I used for decades. Just knowing sine, cosine, and all the formulas for that, being able to figure out angles from things, dealing with triangles, and all the different ways you can tessellate. That was a big thing. For my other classes, I think some of the creative writing classes helped. I loved classes where we read novels and then talked about them. That was my first deep dive into the Odyssey by Homer, and that was fascinating, especially because it was a little above our heads, but we had a great teacher who explained things from the book so we could understand it. And it was basically them going on a big quest. So don't think my little D&D brain didn't go, I see what's going on here. Then I went off to college. Now, I've mentioned that I went to the University of Virginia. I wanted to do computer science, and that was in their engineering school. Big chunk of that was working in teams. So that was my first big introduction to having to have projects. And I've talked about what it's like dealing with people in projects, and you have to have good communication in there. Some people don't work as hard, and sometimes you just have to do their work for them, and not everybody's at the same level, and not everybody's good at the same thing. Got really good at learning that. One of the best classes I took was an honors project class, and we had to make an automated factory, and I was in charge of the robot arm. And I thought that was really cool because not only did I have to learn a new scripting language, but I had never used a physical robot arm. And I learned a lot of things about how those things worked, what they were bad at, something called hysteresis, where you could tell it to go forward and back, and it didn't end up exactly where it was. We came up with solutions to that. It was really a lot of fun. And I remember that class incredibly well because the teamwork was vital for us finishing that automated factory. I also in college got to learn lots of programming languages. When I showed up, I already knew Basic and C, but Pascal was really big. And then I took a class just called Programming Languages where we learned COBOL and Snowball and Lisp and Prolog and just a million different languages, and why there were different languages because they were designed for different things. Some were good at processing strings, some were good at processing numerical data. Fortran, it was used by scientists for a reason. So I learned a lot about not just different languages and how to code in them, but why they even existed. I also got exposed to a lot of math. I mean, applied math, differential equations, 3D math. The ones that probably stuck with me the most were the matrix math, which, of course, once games went 3D, it was a good thing I already knew about vectors and how to do 3D operations on matrices. But I took a couple of statistics classes too, and those really helped. Being able to pull information out of large chunks of data, being able to look for things within a certain sigma. Those helped, especially when you're looking at focus groups or large amounts of data coming in from if you put in automated testing and you had heat maps of things, being able to generate like, oh, look, this is where a lot of people were dying. Let's look into the reasons they were dying. Here's some information about their characters. Maybe we can extract interesting information. Maybe builds aren't being supported well. A good knowledge of statistics helps you do that. I also learned hardware, something that I think modern programmers know less of. Being an engineer, some of my classes were electrical engineering and some of them were computer engineering, meaning I had a class where I was given a breadboard and saying, make an OR gate, make an AND gate, make a NAND gate out of wires and capacitors and resistors. It was very interesting because you learned at a very macro level how to make something that was going on the micro level inside a computer. Helped a lot in formulating my thinking of how to structure code and optimize code. And that's something that I think just doesn't happen anymore. Don't know how important it is. It was very important to me. But I also learned lessons about people not necessarily working in teams. And one of the big ones I learned was there were a lot of people in college who were not there to work. They didn't see it as this amazing opportunity that, in a sense, they were entitled. They acted like, yeah, of course I'm going to go to college and then I'm going to get set up at a cushy job somewhere. They didn't do their work. They lied to themselves, to their teachers, to their parents about doing work. And this is beyond just, I'm being on a team and somebody not doing anything and we're having to fill in for them. I'm talking about, I had friends who thought they were putting in hard work, but they weren't. They would work really hard towards the end of the semester or right before something was due or right before midterm. That's when they actually hit the books. And the rest of the time they were goofing around, taking day trips to places, going to parties. UVA was a huge party school. And if by Thursday or Friday you hadn't already heard of a party going on, you could just walk over to Rugby Road where all the fraternities and sororities are and just walk into a house that was having a party and the front door was open and there was a keg on the porch. It was easy to do that. The problem is I knew a lot of people who that's all they did. That's what they thought college was there for. I even had a really close friend kind of insult me one day because she said she worked harder than me. And when I asked her what she meant, she goes, well, I'm always working till late at night to get things done. And, you fell asleep at 10. And I was like, we came back from class at 2 in the afternoon and you goofed around all afternoon and I did the homework set. So of course I'm not up till 1 in the morning. And it got me, and she said, well, I work harder. My effort is harder than yours. And I didn't agree with her. I'm like, we both are doing the same amount of work. We're just doing it at different times, different paces. So I also had another friend who he literally failed out of college. And that blew my mind. It also kind of scared me because it made me realize this is serious and you have to work hard or you will. College professors are not like high school teachers. They're not there to babysit you. They're not there to hold your hand. You have to put in the work. And when he didn't, he lost a scholarship. So he lost his funding and he had to leave school. And that kind of scared me, especially going on to grad school, which I could not afford. I had student loans and work study and the money I made working at a computer game company to pay for my college because my parents couldn't afford. My mom helped me a little, but I had a brother in college too, and she needed help, both of us, and my dad wasn't helping at all. So when I went to grad school, I had to do it on my own, and I didn't have the money. And luckily, I qualified for a scholarship to do AI at UCI, and I took that seriously. I worked my butt off in grad school. But grad school was interesting because it's grad school is where I had my first interaction with super smart people. I've worked with smart people in high school and college and at work, people who were smarter than me. But grad school is where I met people who were really on another level. I mean, these were people who were smarter than I could ever be. And their intelligence evidenced itself in all kinds of ways that just blew my mind. That they would pick up a concept like that. They would look at complex equations and reduce them, or see what the meaning was, or go, oh my goodness, because of that equation, that means this. And I'm like, I'm still trying to work out what that equation is trying to say. And I worked with people in the industry like that, and I learned not to be jealous of them. It was great to work with people like that. It was fun to follow their lead in things. Also, grad school really taught me how to talk to groups because you were a TA, a teaching assistant, and that was expected in graduate school. So I had to stand in front of 300 people and lecture in front of a blackboard or a whiteboard. I had to have TA meetings with groups of people who would come to ask questions about homework, where I'd have to explain concepts multiple times in different ways to try to get people to understand them. A lot of our classes were built on previous ideas. So people had to understand that by the time you reach this class, you're already expected to know some things. These are new ideas that build on previous ones. And this class is not here to teach you the foundational knowledge. You're expected to know that. We're going on to the next step. Grad school was also the first time I had a formal AI class for me. In undergraduate, my engineering school didn't have an AI class. So I actually minored in psychology so I could take an AI class in the psychology department. Unfortunately, it was a graduate student class, but I begged the teacher to let me, as a fourth year undergraduate who's already going to go on to grad school, I showed her my early admission and I said, please let me take your graduate class. And I did, and it was really good. But when I got to grad school, that's when I finally got to study neural nets, automata theory, a lot of stuff about AI that I really wanted to sink my teeth into, especially machine learning, which is what I specialized in. Grad school is also where I got exposed to LP MUDs, which was an exciting introduction to programming for multiplayer environments, and also programming on the fly. It was game as a service before there were games as a service. You were basically making stuff for people to play that afternoon. It was really exciting to do that. And finally, graduate school was where I got introduced to the concept from people who didn't view game development as a career. Professors, other grad students, my friends that were there all thought computer games were a waste of time and told me not to go into them. So when I finally left and went into them, a lot of them thought I was making a mistake. And I've told you, a few years later, my thesis advisor was asking me to come back and teach class. My friends were asking how they could get in the industry. A few years later, they're asking me how I could get their kids in the industry. So I learned a lot about opinion and that people have a lot of them and they're often wrong and unsupported. But what are you going to do? The moral of all this, I'm not saying school is necessary. I'm not even saying it's for everyone. You could work a similar job to get in the game industry. You could make a demo, which I've said repeatedly. That's a great way of getting a job. But for a lot of people, there are some really important things to learn in school. And for some of you, it's easier to learn them in school than to try to learn them solo, especially social skills, working with groups, what people are like, how to interact with people, how to talk to people, how to work with people on a project. Those are all things that you will learn in school if you just let yourself. Anyway, as you can see, I'm very excited. I loved school. I got a lot of books. I just like learning about things. I think school is great for that. And I think it's a great preparation for game development. but it's not the only path. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this and saw some things that maybe you could you could go to school for.